Hello, good morning. Happy Saturday. Welcome. Elizabeth and I get to introduce Charles Taylor to you guys today. So ask questions, please. Subscribe to wherever you're watching. I always forget to tell people to subscribe. Thank you for joining us on a Saturday. So we wanted to do something for the weekend warrior type people or the people that are, I don't know, sitting around working and want to watch something at the same time. So welcome, Charles.
Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Elizabeth, welcome. How are you?
I'm good.
So, all right. So, anyways, Charles is an interesting story. He came to spring training last year. We'll talk a little bit about that. He's on the enterprise side of our world in the SEO world, and it definitely brings a whole different dynamic compared to a lot of us agency owners that have smaller, medium, even some larger clients. But it's interesting. One of the neatest things that I got to do last year was talk to Charles about, just different questions that, might be in people's minds about, gee whiz, I mean, you get all these hits a month, how do you control all this stuff and everything? And just super cool conversations. And then we also got to meet at a couple other events. And so we'll talk a little bit about Charles and his rise to fame this year, so to speak. But he's an interesting guy. He's worked for a couple major freaking companies that he'll talk about. But ask questions, guys. These things are this is what we like to bring to you guys, are people that are in a different category or a different path than we are. Some people want to get into the enterprise type SEO. Some people like us have been there, probably don't really want to go back. So, but ask your questions, guys. We'll get into this. And then, this is going to be great. So anyways, Charles, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this wonderful world.
Yeah, no problem. So the first thing I'll always warn everybody is the grass is always greener on the other side. For those of us who are in enterprise, we look at the agency or the independent model and be like, wow, that would really be nice. And then I'm sure those of you that are in the agency or independent, like, wow, it would be great to work for a large company. That grass is always greener. The funny thing is that the SEO is not different, but what you end up focusing on is real different. When we make a mistake, if we just neglect to do something, we do end up doing it at such a scale that it really impacts us. So we can have, a simple problem with an XML sitemap can end up being a real big problem for us. Whereas for the typical site that may not be getting hit as much by Google, you could go down for half a day or something, and it really wouldn't be that big of a deal. But on the reverse side, though, we get to see things at scale. We get the benefit from the fact that Google's constantly hitting our site. So just to give you a quick little kind of Reader's Digest version of my story. I currently work. I'm the senior director of SEO for Fox Corporation. I've been there for almost 3 years now. Before that, I was with a company called Verizon, which probably most of you know. Was with them for a little over 5 years. Before that, I was with an e-commerce company for about 5 years, and that was a company that started relatively small but got pretty big. It was a company called Costume Supercenter. We ended up they owned like 10 or 12 different e-commerce sites, and they were costumes and party supplies and cupcakes and lingerie and you name it. They did a little bit of everything. They even had an adult site in the mix, and that was an interesting one to optimize. Before that, I started out really in my career, my professional SEO career, with a company called LexisNexis, and that was back in, I guess, 2007. That company, and was really the company I worked for, was Martindale Hubbell, which was a division of LexisNexis. And what Martindale Hubbell did is they did the books. They did directories of lawyers. So if ever you go to a lawyer's office, they've got shelves full of books. Well, they used to always have shelves full of books. Fortunately, I haven't had to be in a lawyer's office lately. Nothing against lawyers, but when you used to go in the office, they had these books. A lot of them were just directories, and it was directories of other lawyers, and it was a way for them to find and connect with other lawyers. And around, I guess, 05, 06, they started using this thing called the internet, and they started asking questions of Martindale's, like, well, why do I have to pay $1,200 a month or whatever the ridiculous price they're paying for a book when I could just go on this thing called Google? And the company had a panic, and they said, for the first time in like 150 years, the company had been around forever. their sales actually slowed. And
Wow.
I was actually there when their sales went down for the first time, like 100 and so years. And that was like a panic moment for everybody. So one of the things they want to do is they started building websites and actually trying to optimize. And I was one of the first people with that company. And that was very interesting because there you had an enterprise company bringing in a division that they knew nothing about. And culturally, it was a huge shock for both us coming in and for the folks working there, for the folks that had, this is how corporate America is supposed to work. And then you had all these young kids coming in saying, okay, well, we're just going to do this and we're going to do this and we're going to laugh and joke at work. And then you had the other people that didn't, that's not what you did. You always wore the 3-piece suit and the hat, and well, maybe not hats anymore, but it was a very, so that was my first taste of corporate. And I was there for a couple of years. And that's when I moved on to the e-commerce, was a smaller, medium-sized company. I said that maybe that's where I want to be. And then I got kind of pulled away from them by Verizon. And then since then I got recruited by Fox. That's kind of backwards and forwards of where I was. Before I did all that, I had my own business for several years. And ended up building. I kind of fell into, I always joke that you get into SEO out of inspiration or desperation, and mine was definitely on the desperation side. I had a business. I was doing a lot of selling on eBay, Amazon, and I would hit some scares every now and again where someone would, I'd get shut down for like a day or 2 days, and I'd be like, I gotta, figure out a way to protect myself. So I started making my own website, and then after, I don't know, a couple months having a website, I'm like, someone told me, oh, you have to have analytics. I'm like, what's that? So I put it on there, and then I saw this line that said organic traffic. I'm like, what does that mean? And someone explained it to me, and that was really how I started learning about it. And I started building affiliates. That was back in, I guess, I don't know, 04, 05. I started messing around with that, and decided to go legit in, a couple of years.
Did you have any kind of like side gig affiliate stuff you're doing now?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I'm a little insane. I do a little bit of everything. So my
Cool.
day job is with Fox. I do have a couple clients I work with. I have there's a small agency who needs help with SEO, and I do consulting for them. And then I have my own sites. I have a couple of my own sites I run. Some are just tests. Some are just to see if I can build up and make something bigger and better. Build my own kind of passive income. So yeah, I do too much. I do a little bit of everything. So I like doing the client work on my own stuff because it kind of keeps my hands kind of dirty, so to speak. It keeps my boots on the ground. Whereas in an enterprise site, it's easy not to touch. There's things I can't touch, quite frankly.
Yeah, for sure.
There's things I just can't. You couldn't have in a large organization everyone going onto the site and making changes. It has to be controlled. So it's nice to be able to do my own schema as opposed to trying to explain to somebody, here's how you do schema, or doing my own, canonical tags. Supposed to have to explain to me, nope, that's not how a canonical tag works. This is how it works. And re-explaining.
Yeah, one of my disclaimers I do when I talk about schema is that if you're in the enterprise world, you're probably not going to get this stuff approved to put on the website.
So yeah, well, the hard part I find with things like schema and really SEO in general is we can't customize individual pages very well. We have to come up with a template, and this template has to work across the board. And so we end up having to, it's that 80-20. We have to find that 80% that does everything. And that's why I always say the smaller companies, it's hard to be a large organization because we have this authority. We have this massive authority. We're going to get crawled constantly by Google, but we can't optimize to the level that a smaller, medium-sized company can optimize. So
for sure,
there's definitely plenty of holes out there. Optimize SEO wise.
Well, and it goes to say too that you guys and a lot of other people in that realm are traffic hogs. So and traffic is driving everything. So we would all love to have Fox's traffic and not worry so much about here's Bob and here's Joe and here's trying to pick off individual companies as we're moving up the ladder. But you also mentioned about sitemaps, and sitemaps to me is becoming even more important, especially with all this stuff going on with AI and all this other stuff. And one of the first things that I do in my audits is look at the sitemap, and it's amazing how many discrepancies, how many errors, how much stuff is in the sitemap that's either not there anymore. I mean, it's just, and unfortunately, people just don't pay attention to that. They just assume that they have a plugin or they have, whatever, and they delete a page. Well, it's automatically going to delete the sitemap, and they don't, but that's one of the big things. And I know you and I have talked about how important the kind of the basic stuff, back when I started SEO, we lived on the robot.txt and sitemap. That was how we directed, people to go or traffic to go or bots to go. And nowadays I think it's just kind of like just a forgotten thing. Just put it on the shelf. It's working fine. No need to check it, type of thing. So, but on your level, it's probably something you guys got to look at all the time.
So yeah, it's sitemaps for us. There's two things you can know about enterprise companies with their sitemaps is that we're super important and they're always wrong. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've come to the we were just doing a little UAT work on a change that had to be made, and we ran into a problem. And then my first question wasn't, is there a problem? It
Mm-hmm.
was, how bad is this problem? Like, is this, we have a sitemap of 10,000 URLs. Are we talking about 5 URLs? Or are we talking about 1,000 plus URLs? And once you hit that 1,000 plus, okay, now it's something we got to pay attention to. Is it the same problem over and over again? You've just, with enterprise, you just have to accept there's a certain level of error that's going to happen.
For sure.
We're never going to fix it all. I love working with my own site when I have 20 or 30 pages, and I find I can just get in there. I can fix that. You can go through all 30 pages, even a 50 to 100 page site. You can go through it manually in an afternoon. It's not that huge of a problem, but
for sure.
It's a scale thing, which is a problem. Now I'm going to give the first nugget of the day for everybody that's listening. Is there's something else that's just as important as sitemaps, and I would say this is important for large or small companies. And I've talked about this in a few of my presentations, and that's RSS feeds. And some of you may be sitting there thinking, RSS, Charles, is it 2012? And I'm like, yes, it is 2012 again. Google does hit your RSS feeds. Google likes them. I am not sure why Google seems to like it. Did someone make an error in the code and didn't realize they reactivated something? Is it a way for them to process? I suspect it's a way for Google to process a lot easier, a lot quicker and easier. So I would recommend everybody have a robust RSS feed. Use the validator. I think W3 Schools has a validator. I always use it. Just make sure there's no errors, no warnings, and put that link in your header.
Mm-hmm. We also put it starting to put it in the same as a schema.
That's a good idea.
So,
I like that.
That's, you're right. I mean, it's one of those things that we kind of keep an eye on. We know about. I play a lot in the IFTT syndication side. So we kind of figure out which feeds we can kind of, syndicate that way. Find out all these different things that Google's looking for feeds and they're not there. And that's another thing too. It seems like Google's wanting a feed on every single page on your website. And, and so when you're looking in Search Console and you're seeing a lot of the pages that are, crawled, not indexed, are going to be feed pages. And they're really feed pages or RSS pages that really, I don't know why Google's looking for an RSS. It's a water heater page. But it's just, I think one of the things that, you and I talk about a lot is that type of stuff. Is I don't test it enough to see, but I have been following you and some other people, Ted, and some other people that talk about how important they are. So we started playing with it and putting it in schema. And I like the idea of putting it in the header. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so Google will check for the link alternate tag in your header, and you can put your RSS feed in there. I think Google checks it. My suspicion is, and I could be wrong, my suspicion is an RSS feed is a structured markup like schema, and it's a way for Google to process the page without crawling it. And exactly. I wonder, is Google cheating a little bit? Are they well, they could crawl the page and go through all that processing power, or are they saying, hey, if we can find schema and or an RSS feed that's giving us information, maybe that's their first pass before they crawl the page.
If you look at an RSS, if you look at an RSS feed page, it looks like an AMP page, the old AMP page. No images, no, just quick text, flip it on down.
You've got the header, you've got the body, you've got everything lined up there. Google doesn't have to deal with, images and ads and comment sections. They don't have to deal with anything in there, which
exactly.
If I was a programmer, I'd be very happy to crawl that any day other than figure out what is the main content and what is not the main content of a page.
Yeah. So consistently the path of least resistance.
Yeah. Yes. So I've noticed, and that's one of the other benefits working with enterprise is we can see, because we see data at such mass scale. I'll also notice that Google has a lot of, I call them cheats, but they're shortcuts. They're ways to do processing so that they don't have, so they don't have to figure out the, so let's just take something simple. The date using the last modified date or last update date in schema is a great way for Google to figure out when was this page last updated, as opposed to getting the page, doing a diff in its database, figuring out when's the last time I saw it. Okay, it must have changed. Like Google will go through all that processing, or you could just look at your schema, look at your last modified date. I don't know Google's doing that, but that's the kinds of things I'm seeing Google do, where it'll have a little bit of a cheat saying, hey, if this is updated, that means this whole page must have been updated. Or if this wasn't updated, that means this whole page must not have been updated. And they have lots of little things they do to I think, to cut down their processing. And I think that must be an edict within Google over the last couple of years. Like, what can we do to save processing time?
I agree.
100%. So then I have a question for you, Terry. Like, how often do you consistently go in and update schema? Because like, I know for a lot of people that you have done projects for, it's typically a one and done. Or is it something that should be modified on a regular basis?
I mean, the last date modified, first of all, your sitemap should be set to last date modified. So most sitemaps out of the box are set alphabetical. So your about page gets crawled every single time. So I don't really spend too much time, obviously, going back to all the schema and updating. We just updated the water heater page. So I'm going to go in the schema and put a last modified date there, because it's already in the sitemap that it's the last modified. So, but I do agree, a brand new page or everything else that, we play with it. But again, I don't want to give Google the impression, at least on the last modified, unless it's automated. That's the thing. If I've got to manually go into these 10 pages schema and change that date, I don't know. It's just, I look at it more of a scale factor thing for me. So, but I do know that having the date somewhere is super important. Whether you have it in your sitemap, I always show the time and date on the sitemap. I've always have. It makes sense to me. Google would want to say, oh, hey, this is yesterday. I'll crawl it. So, but again, it's just again telling the search engines what was the most recent thing that happened to this website. I don't want to keep crawling the stuff that's been there for months or years or whatever. I want to just crawl what's new, so if it's a new page, if it's a new blog, whatever, that's all I want to crawl. Because we also don't get much time on site compared to somebody like Fox. I wish we had a little chart there that says, hey, you got 2.3 seconds on your crawl, and this local plumber got 0.003 seconds. So we don't know how much time we get. So making it easier for Google to crawl your site, or any robots crawl your site, to get the most accurate information is super important. So
I would recommend something that most folks want to do if they really want to keep an eye on Google. So Screaming Frog has a great tool, Log Analyzer. You can download your logs. I do it for my own personal sites. I download my logs via FTP. I import them into Log Analyzer. You can see what bots are hitting what. And actually doing my own personal sites is when I started realizing the importance of certain pages, like a robots.txt. So someone may say, no, I want Google to hit everything on my site, and there's nothing, so I'm not even going to bother. Why do a robots.txt? Why even bother? Well, I noticed Google was constantly looking for a robots.txt on my site. This was years ago. So I said, okay, I should always have one. And then I said, well, wait a minute. We can put a designation for our XML sitemap and RSS feed in a robots.txt. So I did that. And then I wondered one day, does it really matter? So I ran a test to see, submit it. So there's 3 ways you can submit an XML sitemap. So I had 3 different XML sitemaps, 3 different pages that could only be found by their individual XML sitemaps. I did one via GSC, one via XML sitemap, and one via, one via GSC. One was via the robots.txt, not the XML site. And then I submitted one sitemap via the ping command. There was a ping command, which I think Google's just recently deprecated, so I don't think it works anymore. And what I expected,
I still do it.
I haven't tried it.
Especially if I make a whole bunch of changes to a site, I'll do the ping on the video and the XML site.
So well, that's good to do, because what I learned was that what I expected was the robots.txt, Google's hitting it constantly, so it's going to follow that XML immediately, and then GSC would be a little bit lower, and the ping would get to it whenever it got to it. I found the reverse. Ping was worked almost right away. Google was hitting my sitemap within an hour of me pinging, probably less. Same with GSC. So it was GSC and ping were about the same. XML sitemap, it took or robots.txt, I mean, it took Google literally days to recognize the XML sitemap. So then I ran the test like 2 other times.
They have to come back to see that sitemap. They have to come back to see the robot.txt.
But that's the thing. They were hitting my robots.txt every day, and they weren't hitting the XML in there, which I found very, very interesting.
I wonder what they was looking for then. Maybe the negative directives to stay away from whatever.
I think they were just checking to see should I be staying out of certain areas. Now, with that said, they eventually picked up the XML within the robots.txt. They crawled everything got indexed. So from there, I've always thought to myself, all right, definitely resubmit via Search Console with your XML. Don't worry, definitely. Hey, if the ping command's still working, still use it. Like I said, I heard it was deprecated, but I haven't tried it. I still put XMLs in my robots.txt, even though my test said it was the least reliable way. I still put it in there because it doesn't cost anything. It doesn't eat. Just do it, and it's in there. But yeah, that was very interesting that that Google, even though it's hit my robots regularly, it did not hit the XML that I submitted in the robots as regularly as I would have expected. Like I said, it took like 3 or 4 days at least.
Yeah, especially since, that's robot.txt was like old school. That was like the first, we used to call it the directive file, when this is what you wanted to have the bots follow and then go to the site type of thing. It's also one of the things that it's amazing how many websites I audit that don't even have one still, so it's, but yeah, I again, maybe I'm old school or whatever, but I make sure my robot.txt is pretty open, definitely has the sitemap on it. In WordPress, I disallow the regular WordPress crap, but then, I used to do a lot more with robot.txt. And so until I started looking at other people's robot.txt. So I believed at one time my robot.txt was such a hindrance to the crawl that they just gave up. I had so many different, stay away from this, don't do this, all this different stuff in this robot.txt file. And then I minimized like 3 or 4 sentences or 3. Yeah, that was it. So, but all right, cool. So
I was just gonna say, we were talking earlier about dates, and one of the things I want to put in there, you mentioned time, and that's 100% accurate. Google, I've noticed, is very sensitive to time zones. We actually about a year or so ago had some problems with Google displaying our time properly in the search results, and we realized once we fixed our time zone, it magically fixed it. We were doing UTC, we changed it to Eastern, and immediately Google liked it. So and I learned this from Ted. Actually, I think I learned it initially at Spring Training because I was telling him about times, and he was saying how difficult it is, how times are very difficult to code and process.
For sure.
So it's something you were mentioning about times. I think that's something that everybody should be, take away from is like, get your times right, because Google already has trouble with times.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, Google right now is having trouble with everything. It's, I talk to them. One of the biggest questions I get is, because I'm so big in on-page and I'm such a believer in on-page, how is the, just the vomiting of AI content affecting that? And again, I think we have to make it easier for the bots to figure out what we want. It's, I understand they're going after all the information overload, spam crap. But we're all using AI. I don't know anybody that's not. So, but it just depends on how you're using the AI side. Something I'm going to talk heavily about at Spring Training is basically how to organize your website.
Google themselves are using AI.
Exactly.
They're working with publishers to create AI news content. This is a year before. They started this over a year ago. And they just released this mass AI content. Like, Google, you're working with people to create AI content. So what do you mean this mass AI content? And what's the definition of mass content then? 10 pages, 100 pages, 1,000 pages?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the whole thing is that, we're still kind of, at least on our side, we're still kind of dipping our toes in, like I did 10 blog cluster yesterday. We're doing more clustering writing content now than anything. But I think the idea is still, is it helpful? Is it going to answer queries that people are looking for, or is it just fluff content? why do you need a green hot water heater? Well,
Yeah.
is that even a search term? So anyway, so yeah, I think it's on the enterprise side, part of the AI, are you guys dealing with the AI video imaging type stuff that gets thrown into your sites throughout how are you guys monitoring AI? Good
So
AI compared to
yeah,
bad.
so yeah, AI is one of those things that and I started championing this a while ago internally. It's like, look, AI needs to solve a problem.
Mhm.
AI is not the solution in and of itself. It's the solution to a specific problem. And
Yeah.
so we started looking at it that way. One of the things, we have a team that looks at how to do our headlines, just our on-site headlines. I'm not even talking about title tags or the headline on a page, but when you land on the homepage of a website, now you have to think about it. So a user lands on our homepage. Now you have all these articles competing for that user's attention. So we've actually spent a lot of time using AI to figure out what is the best article to pull, what is the best headline to pull somebody in. So I think simple things like that. When we do distribution of our content to other places, maybe we can have AI rewrite the headline or the title tag or the meta description, make it look a little more unique. I mean, we can do things like that where we're not changing articles. We're just trying to make sure that we're AI is doing things that a human couldn't practically do. A human being couldn't go through every one of our headlines and make it a little more clickbaity. That's just not practical. But AI could do that.
For
We
sure.
don't do anything with images. We deal purely with Getty images for all of our imagery.
Okay.
I think that's just kind of a corporate standard. And video, all of our video. I mean, we've got the channels, so we've got more video than we'll ever know what to do with.
Oh, for sure.
So
Yeah.
so that's. I've been trying to get the team, and this is a bigger issue. My goal is I want to get AI transcripts of everything and summaries, and that's a great place where we could get a summary of a video clip. Having a
For sure.
person, it doesn't make it less valuable. And it's no different than what a human being could do. If I sat down and wrote a summary, it's going to be no better or no worse than what an AI could do. So I think those are places where AI could really be helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's got a lot of great things with it. One of the questions came up, how did I set up my cluster and stuff? And at least with Solterra, and I actually taught this at Dory's event last year, is we personalize Chat GPT to the client, very, very specifically, all the way down to not just who they are, where they're located, what their goals are, what's their expansion goals. I mean, these 20 questions that we have all of our clients fill out to feed Chat GPT, then you can write content, you can, write clusters about content, depending on how you do it through prompting. And it's really, really accurate content. So we stick it through Grammarly Pro, we send it to the client for approval, and we're amazed if we get more than 5 corrections on 10 pieces of article. It's that accurate because the client gave us the information to feed it. So and we can change the voice. I might go after one article, might be in a voice of empathy because they're hot. We did a blog about a hot water heater, not really exploded, but kind of just water everywhere, so we did it in an empathy voice, and that was kind of interesting because it made it sound like you're a sad sack. But we had to go back and kind of play around with that. But I think, yeah, we're a huge Chat GPT-4 company right now, especially. So just because we figured out early in this game that otherwise it's just a big scraper unless you personalize it.
Yeah.
So
no, your presentation was great at Rock Stars, and I took away a lot of things, and I utilized your prompt templates quite a bit for clients who are trying to do a lot of blogging, and they were just all over the place. I'm like, no, here's your direction was perfect because it showed here's how you focus everything in, here's how you make sure that you can scale it, you can scale the creation. I don't even use it for the writing of the blogs, but it's just like, what should we write about? The outlines. It's great for coming up with ideation, outlines, and then also you had the whole thing with the topics and the entities, and I don't want to give too much of it away, but you had great ideas, and I can hand it off to someone now and actually give them a system, like, here's the system you want to use, so that now the writers don't have to guess. They don't have to come up with things on their own. They have something they can follow. And that's where I like using AI, because I don't have it right, but I will have it help me ideate and create outlines.
No, exactly right. I mean, we're our content for our clients now went from 2 to 4 a month to 10 plus, depending on the client. And because we're looking at content a different way, just because we're query based. I mean, I'm all about queries. You know, how are people searching for that keyword? Don't just write the keyword. You know, what's the people also ask? What are all these things that Google's giving people credit for? That's what you should be writing about. So, and then break it out to see, hey, can I write more about this? You know, can I expand on this query or question or thought? You know, so, and then you just start seeing, you know, Google's just eating that stuff up, you know, because they're all interlinked together, kind of like the, you know, hub of or a bicycle wheel. They're all interlinked together, and they all link to the main page you're writing about. So, and we're seeing just great results with that. And it's an upcharge. So we definitely, it's not like we throw it back in there. We say, hey, you know, Mr. Plumber, let's do a 15 cluster around tankless hot water heaters or whatever. So,
and you're creating great value for them too. I mean, that's the key.
for sure.
That's the key. You can use AI to create more value as an agency, as a consultant, and that's what these companies need. They need somebody to come in and just take care of this, just make this thing right for me.
And that's, you know, and you're exactly right. And it's just, you know, but you have to. We also share the chat link with our clients so they can write and do stuff. I'm helping one of our clients write a book through ChatGPT.
Awesome.
You know, it'll do all kinds of stuff. You just have to be creative of what to feed it. So, you know, when I did the Rockstars things, I came up with a whole storyboard for, you know, YouTube videos and all this stuff through just this ChatGPT thing. So, and we haven't, you know, full disclaimer, I haven't played with Claude and all the other most popular ones. I'm the type of person that I pick one and I master it. So, you know, and now we're getting ready to do the image side. The image side's a whole different rabbit hole. So
that is, yeah. I've been using images for my own personal sites, and it's funny. Like, it's funny that you have to be very. So first of all, I feel like I need to take a lesson in like photography 101, because something I've realized, and I learned this at the Rockstars as well, that if you use the right terminology, AI knows what you're talking. So if I say I want a, you know, postmodern full face 50% lighting headshot of Terry Sam, like it I'm kind of making these terms up, but AI knows what I'm talking about.
For sure.
You know, I want a 10% lighting angle deflection, or I'm making the words up, but like those words, it knows what, and if you can explain it in those terms to the AI, your content will come out significantly better, as opposed to, I want a picture of a crazy guy sitting on top of a car, you know, with zombies all around. Like, it's just going to kind of figure out what it wants to do. But if you can explain it in the way that a photographer or artist would explain it, the content's much better. I have noticed that AI gets fixated. There was one, I used the term, I wanted a wide-eyed, crazy-looking 1800s prospector type. That was one of the people I wanted in there. And AI insisted on putting gold nuggets in his hand. And I kept telling AI, don't put gold nuggets in his hand. And it kept putting gold nuggets because I use the term prospector. Exactly. And AI knows that prospectors look for gold. And so there was no way I was going to get away from that. So yeah, you have to be maybe you should have
prompted, like, you know, give me a picture of a broke prospector.
There you go. I gave up. I said, fine, he's going to have a gold nugget in his hand. Just gave up. Exactly. My website has an old guy with a gold nugget in his hand, has no purpose for being there, but I couldn't get AI to take it out.
Yeah. And it's and you know, Chad Michael's doing all the SEO Spring Training player images. Those things are just freaking awesome. And and he's going to teach people at the tech day how he does all that. So it's Chad's one of the people that we definitely follow for images. It's amazing. Some of
Chad's awesome. I just follow him for anything. Whatever Chad says, I'll do that.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, how did you hear about spring training last year?
So I've known about spring training for a couple years. So I started getting really sick of the standard conferences. So for years, for a decade, I'd done the SMX East, SMX Advanced, and the PubCons and the MozCons, and I started getting to the point. Number one, that a lot of them started getting real pitchathons. Like, it was just nothing but people just pitching constantly. People were saying the same things constantly. You'd go to one event. I tried mixing up the events, and because people were doing the same thing year after year after year, and then tried to mix up the events, and that worked a little bit, but then people started, and then I noticed around the same time, people started just taking the same things. And so I'm like, I gotta, and not to, it sounds egotistical and arrogant, but I wasn't learning anything. I'm like, I gotta go to people that are talking about things that I just don't know anything about. And so I started, and this happened right before the pandemic. I started saying, what else is out there? And I heard of spring training, and then I heard of rock stars, and I heard some of these other events. I'm like, wow, I need to start going to these. And then the pandemic hit, and then no one was going any place. And so I knew about spring training for a couple years. I know the guys on Fight Club talked about it. So yeah, I guess it was last year. I said, oh, wait a minute. Everybody was back up to going to places. No one was wearing masks anymore to go to places. I was like, this is awesome. Let me start going places again. And this is what I want to go to. And it was awesome because I got a chance to obviously to meet you guys and actually meet everybody. Everyone was really, very nice. And so that's something I would recommend to anybody who's going to spring training. If you're just going as an attendee, and even if you don't have like a VIP, do not hesitate to just walk up and talk to any of the speakers. We're all a bunch of introverts, so it's just I try to break myself of that habit. But just feel free to talk to any of us. I mean, I'm always happy to talk to anybody about anything. Just don't be afraid. Everyone's really, really nice and really, really cool to talk to. And obviously, met you guys right away, and it was really nice to meet you guys. And
it was funny because when we got your form that you signed up last year, we're like, oh my gosh, somebody from Fox Business. That was when you were with Fox Business. You hadn't been promoted yet. Congratulations on your promotion.
Thanks.
But we were like, oh wow, we got somebody, because one of the things as conference host is you try to get people from outside your little circles, and this is our 5th one, so obviously we've got a following as far as our circle. But then you start seeing, oh wow, we got a guy from Fox, and then we got last year we had 2 local lawyers show up that they wanted to do their own marketing. So so you figure out and you try to figure out, okay, wow, this is cool. So that was the first question I asked you is, how did you hear about it? And so that was intriguing. Did you talk about it at your Fox meeting?
Actually, I did. I did a whole presentation to the team. It's like what I learned, because I took away a lot of great things, even the things that weren't SEO specific. So you had a lot of good speakers last year that talk about other things other than SEO, talk about organization and whatnot. I found those just as helpful. And actually, interestingly enough, I ended up having a whole separate kind of like group meeting with the product team about some of the things that organization, dealing with. So from an agency, you have to deal with clients. Well, internally, I have internal clients, and I found that very, very helpful in communicating to folks, communicating to devs and whatnot, saying, look, when you get people giving you pushback, it's not because they're trying to hassle you, it's because they just don't know what's going on. Here's how you help them stay in the loop, so to speak. And I found that just as helpful as any of the SEO stuff.
Oh, for sure.
I've also realized. Oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Especially dealing with devs.
Yeah.
So. That's one of the hardest things. Well, I mean, I'm talking devs that aren't on your team, so, my big client that I had to have everything submitted by the 20th of every month. It would go to committee. They would tell me what was approved and what wasn't approved. And, it was just, it was, I don't know. Like, what do you mean this isn't approved? This is simple, Well, they didn't understand it because I wasn't the one talking to them. There was a third party or a middle person talking to the devs. And so, yeah, that was one of the frustrating things
but also communicating upwards and downwards. Like, so I'll speak to, an executive vice president or something like that. Now, this person, they're running around constantly. They do not want me to get into the weeds, because getting in the weeds it just wastes their time. They just need to know. And really, one of my big takeaways was you have to make sure when you're done speaking with anybody, client, internal, external, you're leaving them with an emotion. You're leaving them with a feeling. They're not going to remember the facts, but they will remember, was I comfortable that Elizabeth knew what she was talking about? Was I comfortable that Terry had a plan going forward? Was I comfortable that Charles, while he had problems, was working on fixing the problems and knew what he needed to do? That's really ultimately what you need to leave a client or internal client with is they need to feel comfortable with you. And everyone's had it. Everyone's had someone, you take your car to the shop, or maybe you have someone come to look at your house and do some work on something. And when it's all done, is it the fact that they explained the problem wasn't really what helped you? It was, did I feel they were confident? It was always a feeling they're left with. And that was something that I think that all of us need to learn more. It's easy, because we're all kind of nerds. It's easy to get in the weeds and start talking all the details. And that's not so much. And that makes people nervous because they don't know what you're talking about. They don't understand it. And now you're leaving them with a question mark, and you're leaving them uneasy. And that's never a good position for a client, or, again, internal or external, or downwards. You have people. So I have teams I manage. You have to be able to explain to folks, hey, here's why we're doing things. It's really easy to say, why don't we just fix these XML sitemaps and make them perfect? It's like, you're right, we could, but let's look at how much time and energy we would require. Would we really get that much? There's a lot of juice out of that squeeze. So you have to always explain, here's why, we're short people. We just need to hire more people. You're right, we do. But there's a whole legal HR thing going on right now, and we can't for these specific reasons. And now we're really in a weird spot. And the new fiscal year doesn't start for another 2 months, so we might as well wait for 2 months. Unfortunately, it's like you have to be able to explain at the people's level, either at a high level or low level. Like, here's what's going on, and here's why. The why, and make sure people understand that. Okay, and again, it's always boils down to the same thing. Okay, Charles is working on it. We trust him, and that's really ultimately what you got to make them leave with, that feeling that you've got it handled.
Yeah, for sure. Now, so do you have to deal with your obviously Fox site being attacked? I mean, whether it be trying to inject something, or you have to be on radars out there to say, hey man, if I can hack into Fox, man, I'd freaking get the trophy on my shelf. And do you have to do you see stuff like that and deal with stuff, or do you guys have a separate security type?
So the good news is, or the bad news is, yes, everybody is gunning for our sites. We're a large site. And I've learned over the last couple of years that there are some people that don't like Fox. Go figure. There are some people that don't like us and think we're evil. So, so you've got that going on too. So you've got the regular hackers, and then you've got people that have a vendetta. So that's the bad news. The good news is we have a whole team that worries about that. I don't have to worry about it, fortunately. Very smart, very hardworking guys. They keep an eye on stuff. With that said, stuff still sneaks through. So for example, I know there's been articles written recently about that /1000 spam that John Mueller just completely dismissed. I don't think he should really be dismissing. I'll say, talk to Ted if you want to know more about that. He definitely has a good eye on this stuff. But we get that stuff. Like, I looked at our logs, and immediately like, yep, we're getting it. But I looked at it, I'm like, okay, it's just not to a level that we have to worry about. I pointed out to our team and said, hey, when you see this kind of stuff, this is just as garbage, and this is what they're trying to do, and then they can handle it. Then they can create a template that takes care of it. But they got to be careful. They can't just say, block anything that's going to a /1000, because we might have pages that just happen to be named /1000. So it's all these weird, so it's ends up being a lot more complicated. But we have a team that gets to worry about it. So I don't have to fret over it.
Yeah, well, one of the first things I asked you was, is your job offensive or defensive? And what's your answer? And it might have changed from a year ago.
So yeah, hopefully I answer it the same as I answered it when we talked. I would say that about 30% of my job is risk management internally, though. It's not even worrying about somebody hurting our site. It's making sure we don't hurt ourselves. And I can't tell you how many times I have a guy that literally once a month or once a quarter, I think we have it once a quarter, he reviews all the templates to see what changed in our template. Oh, someone released something a month ago that changed this, and now our page load differently. And they didn't even think to talk to SEO about it. They just figured it had nothing to do with SEO. Fortunately, most people will come to SEO and say, hey, is this an issue? Should we be concerned about this? Sometimes things just have to be done. Recently, we decided to gate content, meaning, if you go to foxnews.com, there's a good chance you're going to have to give an email address now to start seeing certain articles. That's a problem. If you're going to block Google, that's a problem. We actually had an issue where someone decided, we're going to gate the first debate. And they didn't check with me because they didn't think it had anything to do with SEO. What they didn't realize is by gating the video page, they were essentially blocking the search engine. So we had a problem during one of our debates long ago. But we fixed that, and I was able to explain to the team, that's an impact. So there's that. 30% of the job is just how do we protect ourselves from ourselves? I would say another 30% of the job is how do we make the system better? Going back to what we talked about earlier about, well, I can't customize individual pages with schema. So how do I set up a schema system for our articles that will work, across all of our articles? It may not be perfect, but it will work every place. So there's that enhancements. And then there's the fixing things that are wrong. Like, okay, all of our sitemaps, for example, are alphabetized. We don't want them alphabetized. We want them sorted by last mod date, or we're not using, we're using UTC dates and not Eastern time, for example. That's another simple example of how we can fix things that are quote unquote broken or not optimal for SEO.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. Now, do you guys have any talk communication responsibility to the local Fox News websites?
So there are about 20 some odd local affiliates. Some of them are owned by us, some of them aren't. So like, for example, Fox LA, Houston, Tampa, Seattle has one. Those are just a few. I know ones I've worked with off the top of my head. And so we work with them, and they are on the same platform. And so what I do is I work with them, and I work with the lead there to be like, okay, here's what we want to change on the platform. So the lead's like, all right, what's the first? So they hired actually a guy recently who's really sharp, and he's like, okay, what's the first thing? I'm like, okay, number one, let's get this taken care of. All right, do you have an RSS feed? Are they submitted to Google Publisher? I'm like, really day one kind of stuff, but like let's. And that's what you have to do. You always, even though it's a large site and even though we're dealing with 20 plus sites, it's like, all right, step one, what do we do? Let's take care of this. And then we take care of this. And then we take care of this. And it's not hard stuff, but it can get real complicated because of the scales you're dealing with.
Yeah. Kind of like what Elizabeth preaches is consistency in the communication. So you don't have a Fox News in Butte, Montana reporting something different than regular Fox News.
Yeah, so my job's a lot more lately been making sure that all of our different sites are using the same systems, using the same processes, using the same best practices, to the point where I even communicate now. Fox is a large company, so we have like New York Post, and I talk to them, TMZ. We're all part of kind of the same thing. So I talk to the guy from TMZ. He's a blast to talk to. Shout out to Javon if you're watching. But it's the Tubi's owned by us too. So so I talked to the guy who works there, Angel. He's great too. But and so we're always communicating and helping each other out as much as possible. I can tell them, hey, here's what I've seen on our side. You might want to consider this, and then they might have seen things themselves and be like, hey, we saw this over here. And I'm like, huh, that's really cool. Maybe I can implement it across all the new sites.
That's cool, man. What a chore is it? And your job's probably never boring.
No, I never get bored. And I'm not just saying that because we're on video. I definitely get bored.
No pressure.
Yeah,
exactly. So, Elizabeth, do you have any questions for anything that you want to talk with Charles about?
You know what? I really like your systemic approach to managing everything, because like you said, it's a huge animal and there's a lot of moving parts and pieces. And so I know that sometimes, like, because you're corporate, you've got a lot more to deal with than maybe like a smaller agency. But I think a lot of smaller agencies can take that kind of approach in managing their own systems and processes. It's like, okay, how do you eat that elephant one bite at a time? You can't tackle everything all at once. So let's evaluate and look at big picture, what's the whole entire thing, and then what are the parts and pieces that we can attack to get everything under control. And so I definitely respect that about you, that you do have like the big global picture, but then you can also see the tiny details.
Yeah, I think there is so much that the large, these large conferences, again, like the SMXs and the SEO Spring Trainings can learn from each other. I think there should be a lot more cross-pollination. Actually, lately I've been thinking maybe I need to try to get myself into one of the SMXs and say, hey, here's what I've learned working with the quote unquote black hat community. Because that's the thing. Any small conference is immediately labeled black hat. And that's like, first of all, that's not fair. It's not true. It's not accurate. And what I learned, and this is one of the reasons why I was very interested in doing things like spring training, is that you folks have to deal with things that I don't have to deal with. You have to figure out how to send a signal to the search engine that I don't have to figure out how to send. But often you folks are much better. You talk, especially someone like a Mike Marlino. He's figured out all these specific things you've got to send to the search engines to make them respect you and understand, like, okay, this is an important business. And there's a lot of us large organizations, we're not sending these signals. Or if the signal's being sent, it's being sent accidentally or by default and not intentional. And there's a lot of things I've learned that we can do on the enterprise side a lot more intentionally that will really, really give us more powerful. Unfortunately for smaller companies now, it makes us even more powerful. It's going to push you guys down a little bit, but there's lots that we can learn from each other. I think that, organization, what we do organizationally, whether you've got if you've got only one client, so if you're a consultant or an agency, you've got 1 or 3 or 4 or 5 clients, great. But if you want to get bigger, you need systems. And if you want to get to, 100 clients, or if you want larger clients, if you want to go, hey, I have these small, I have these plumbers and I love this, but let me start getting some medium sized, maybe even larger companies, you're going to make sure you need to be able to scale. And hopefully I can pass a lot of that knowledge on to everybody, but here's how you can scale your business.
For sure, 100%. And that's so important. And then you also have to look about, okay, so I'm in this, I have all these local plumbers. I'm going to go now over here to maybe this franchise or whatever. And now all of a sudden, boom, I don't have access to the back end of their website to do stuff. Now I've got to go through a process to even see if I can get stuff approved that's normal. So it's when you decide to go down that road, things change in different directions. It's not just about getting more money per month. So,
and you start getting pushback in ways that you would never expect.
Exactly.
I know. So I was speaking with Lee at a conference, and he just loves this story. When I was working for Verizon, phone calls to our technical support are very expensive. So we wanted to reduce phone calls. So the solution was, let's just take the phone number off the website. And it's like, no, that's not the solution. And the problem was they took the phone number off the website. Google just started grabbing another number. And the question was, how do we make Google not put a phone number? And it's like, guys, 250,000 people a month were searching for our phone number. Google's going to put a number there. So it's like you're going to start getting, you start dealing with a franchise, something. You're going to start getting questions you've never gotten before. And you're going to get people coming at you from a position of like, hey, we need to reduce this cost, or we need to change this, or we're worried about brand management, not so much about traffic. We need to make sure our brand is being cared for properly on the search engine. And so you end up having to approach it very, very differently.
Yeah, 100%. And it's, we preach brand on a little level, where you guys have to preach brand on a mass scale, globally, same with, you and I talked about Verizon, and Verizon's big problem was the global reach.
They have they spend billions of dollars on their brand, maybe not billions of dollars, but definitely millions of dollars on a brand in a year. Making sure you rank for your brand name, whereas all of us think, oh, that's no big deal. It's, rank for the brand name. But to them, that's very, very important. What shows up when you search brand? If you search, we did a migration from Verizon Wireless over to Verizon.com, VerizonWireless.com over to Verizon.com. That messed up Google. One of the things we learned is that when you search Verizon Wireless, the knowledge panel got messed up. And that was a big deal because that's a powerful brand, and it was very visible. So you had CEOs seeing this, board members seeing this and flipping out, and like little things like that. It's like, you've got to make sure you care for all these little things and handle it, because there's a lot of money behind these brands.
Oh yeah, 100%, for sure. So what are you going to talk about at Spring? Oh, sorry, Elizabeth.
If it's a small company, they may not have millions behind it, but that's their livelihood. So I don't take that lightly, especially doing site migrations, building new sites for clients. Even if you are Joe the plumber down the street, I'm going to take as absolute careful care of your URL structure and your rankings as, any large company, because that could be death for a company, a small company.
And for a small company, your brand, that's the word of mouth advertising. That's really what we all want to attain, what Amazon's attained. No, but very few people go to Google and then go to Amazon. Most people go straight to Amazon. They bypass Google and go right to Amazon. That's really what every company wants to get to. That bypass Google completely and just come straight to my website. Or worst case scenario, search my brand name in Google to come to my website. They're looking for me specifically.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's awesome. So what are you going to bless us with at spring training this year?
So you were mentioning traffic a little bit earlier, massive amounts of traffic, and we were just talking about traffic, like having people find you. There are types of traffic that a lot of folks aren't aware of, but can take advantage of. So specifically, I'm going to talk about Discover, Google Discover. It is, some people may not even know it exists. If you go into Search Console, there is a section for Google Discover if your site gets Google Discover traffic. If your site is not eligible for it or just doesn't get anything, you won't even see it. You won't even know it exists. But it is a massive amount of traffic that could be waiting for you there. It's a great way to build your sites, a great way to build your brand. I want to make sure that that folks know that it exists, and it doesn't matter whether you're Joe the plumber down the street or whether you're Fox Business or whether you're TMZ, you can get this traffic. And the only warning I've already done my outline. I have my last slide. My warning is it is fickle. It is real fickle traffic. Don't rely on it. Just it's gravy. It's the icing on top of the cupcake. It's not the cupcake. It's not the meat.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's awesome. And when I saw that topic on the site, I was like, oh, that's freaking cool, because I don't know anything about Google Discovery. So Google Discover. But I do try to get into, and they've taken a lot of stuff away that we used to like, Google did, so, but I think that's going to be awesome, kind of showing. Do you think is it a traffic thing you need to get that? Like a lot of things has to, especially like even core web vitals. You have to have a certain amount of traffic to even get core web vitals. Mm-hmm. You can't do 100 hits a month and think that you're going to get core web vitals. You're not. So is that also that type of process, you think, that it depends on traffic, or can we force the issue?
So Discover is controlled. There are some technical things you have to do, but it really boils down to traffic and engagement.
Okay.
There are some ways that you can kind of prime the pump a little bit, put yourself at least in the running. It's like, hey, I could potentially get stuff, but it's think of back in the day, it was like, I want to go viral on Facebook, and like, think of it like that. It's like writing viral stories, and there's a method you can use. There are things that will definitely help you. There are things that won't help you. There's things that will kind of keep you from ever showing up. So I'll give all those specific rules. That here's the way Google, here's what Google says. Here's what's been I've seen in my experience. If I were going to do it, we do it, but when we do it, here's how we structure our articles to increase the chances of getting that traffic.
Oh man, that's awesome. That's so cool. So, and again, it's a lot of people are on the referral traffic bandwagon, and they need to be. Traffic from other sources than Google search is so important. So we do display ads for traffic. We do all kinds of stuff to try to get, especially from Bing and, some other Reddit and all this other stuff that, that everybody else is now getting on board with. And it's super important. So
that'll probably be 2025 if you have me come back. I'm going to talk about all the different kinds of traffic channels. It's so easy to get so focused on how am I in the maps or how am I on google.com. And you forget there's news traffic, there's image traffic, there's video traffic, there's traffic on YouTube, there's traffic on Bing, there's traffic on there's all these traffic channels, and we ignore them. I understand they're small, but if you could add a couple percentage points to each channel, that starts equaling money for a client, especially a small client or a large client, because we can scale it.
I agree. I mean, it's just, it's only been, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years. We've actually started looking at referral traffic and where it's coming from and how can we get more of it. Michael Molino talks a lot about that, just paying attention to your numbers and, wow, we're getting a lot from here. Let's get more from here, So, but yeah, no, that's awesome. That's cool. So this year, everybody, in case you haven't heard, is a little bit different. So in the morning, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we're going to have people live on stage in the big room. And then in the afternoons, Friday and Saturday after lunch, we're going to have breakout rooms, mastermind breakout rooms. So there's going to be 4 of them. There'll be one for on page, one for AI, one for off page, and then one for everything else. So agency growth, there's 2 or 3 different types of variables in the MISC room, I guess we could call it. But it is a different format. It's format that we think is going to be more engaging for people. We think it's going to be more personal. You're going to be able to go to the on-page room and see me speak about siloing and all this other stuff that I like to talk about, and be able to ask me specific, questions. I'm a whiteboard guy, so I'll probably be using the whiteboard. I probably won't use a, PowerPoint presentation. So, but that's the difference of, this year. This year also was 3 days, which is different than last year. We've been 2 days every other time except for the digital. So it's providing more people, more value. The speakers stay on site, just like last year, nothing's changed. So you get to, find them in the bar, have dinner with them, do all kinds of stuff to build relationships and really change your life. I mean, I don't say that lightly. The people I've met at conferences, and my friends, maybe even I can even call them family. They're gold. Charles knows, like I do, I can reach out to any of these guys if I got a problem. And that's where you feel really comfortable in this business. If CBS wants to hire me or whatever, Charles is the first person I'm going to freaking reach out to and say, hey, is this even a good idea? What should I negotiate? Because if you go to that level, your contracts change, all that stuff goes all out of whack. So, make friends with people that are in that space already. What did they do wrong? Hey, make sure you have this in your contract. I would have done this differently. So, but that's the kind of stuff. And I'm sure you're going to see Charles, and Charles is going to talk to you about what he's going to talk about in 2025. So, in 2025, things might be completely different.
Yeah,
so
possible.
But anyways, we hope you guys can come to the event. We have our sponsors up there. Actually, I think we have one more to add. Maybe not.
Yeah,
one more to
I
add.
have one more to add. But also I wanted to add, we've been to a few of the bigger conferences that have like massive amounts of people. And one of the things that we look at intentionally is, because so many of us are introverts and we are not like super social butterflies, we take that into consideration with the venue. We make sure that the hotel knows that our people typically stay on site. They congregate around the bar because, that's just who we are. But we make sure that the facilities, the hotel has places to hang out for everybody who does stay on site, so that you can have those conversations, because we're not the type to go out to like a loud, crazy bar and talk shop. Like, we want the quiet areas, hey, I really want to pick this apart. I want to understand, how do you do this? How did it help your agency? Or, how did you get an agency from a freelancer? And then, if you have a particularly sticky problem with a client, how can you unstick it? And so we want to make sure that the facilities have those opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. And it's, it's very important that, I tell people all the time that if you come to spring training for specific reasons or whatever, and you don't get those specific reasons, reach out to me and I'll make sure you do. So we also continue on the event after the fact. So here in the next couple of weeks, we're going to build the private Facebook group for this year, and we will have AMAs after the event. We keep it going. We want you guys to, might sound kind of weird, but we want you guys to be part of our family, and we want to help you through whatever you're struggling with. So, but I think it's going to be, one of the ones that you don't want to miss this year. We're very excited about the new format. And we've got one VIP ticket. We had one that had a flight problem getting here in time, but the VIP is the Yankees Diamondback game. We've rented a couple suites. We did this the very first spring training. It was the Cubs and Diamondbacks. And, it still today is one of the, most popular VIP events that people went to. So, again, hope you guys can make it. If you have any questions for us, reach out to us. If you have an agency and you want to bring a few people, contact Elizabeth directly, and she'll, get you guys into a different ticket type system. But anyways, Charles, thank you so much for spending some Saturday morning with us. I guess it's Saturday afternoon for you.
It's been great. Thanks for having me. So
it's awesome that you're able to do this on a weekend, but it's going to be so exciting to see you here in a few weeks. And definitely hearing about, Google Discover. That's one of the coolest things. Oh, congratulations on being part of Fight Club now. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, so, here's a great takeaway for folks that a year ago today, I hadn't gone to spring training yet. I didn't really know anybody. Now I get to speak at spring training, and I got invited to be part of Fight Club. And so I think that's a great example of how when you meet people, talk to them. You know, everyone's really nice, and share. Don't be afraid to share what you know, and because you may find that you know something that other people just don't know. And I went into this thinking, I don't know, these folks, they know so much more than I do, and they can do all this stuff. And I started learning, oh wow, maybe I do know some things that people are interested in. And so not only, you know, feel free to reach out to folks and ask questions, but also don't be afraid to share, because I think you'll find that you definitely have information that other people, you can solve someone else's problem.
For sure. And as a bonus, you only find out this if you watch this video. If you watch this video and you say, hey, I saw you with Charles on Saturday, I'll give you my chat GPT SOP. So
That's a bonus, right?
That's a little bonus. So, but you got to go through the video. So I'm going to see how many people actually watch it. So, anyways, and this is our 5th podcast. So it's pretty cool. We're going to be doing a lot of these. So anyways, enjoy the rest of your weekend, Charles. Thank you so much. You know, have fun up there in Jersey area. Go out and enjoy the wilderness. So.
Not today. It's raining.
Oh, it's raining. Okay. Yeah. All right. Perfect. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Reach out if you got any questions, challenges, or problems. And we will see everybody soon.
Great.